EU regulators are pushing to break the monopoly of big technology. They've apparently asked Google to sell off some of its digital advertising business. By doing this, EU has targeted one of Google's most important revenue drivers. This is a part of its sweeping antitrust complaint against the search giant. So what is the EU furious about? It says that Google is abusing its dominant position in online ad sales. It says it favors its tech services to the point that it affects its competitors. Let me just break this down for you. Google's flagship service is its search engine, but its main source of revenue is online advertising. Number one, it sells advertising space on its own website and apps. And number two, it mediates between the advertisers who want to place their ads online and publishers who provide this space. So that's the two things that Google does. That these advertisers and publishers rely on AdTech industry tools for putting out their ads. Basically, the tools that Google provides. The EU says that Google has been misusing these tools for its own advantage. It says that Google is present at all the levels of the AdTech supply chain. The search giant provides technology that enables data collection, ad buying, and publishing as well. Simply put, it has a monopoly in digital advertising. And not only does this harm Google's competitors, but also publishers' interests. It also increases the cost for advertisers. That's why EU has asked Google to sell parts of its advertising business. Google has strongly reacted to the EU's decision. The Vice President of Global ADS, Dan Taylor, said the complaints aren't new and that they only relate to a narrow part of Google's advertising business. The EU case, of course, further adds to Google's regulatory headaches. The company is already battling multiple antitrust cases around the globe. Its vast empire of online ads, search and app stores has been in the crosshairs of regulators for a while now. But the EU, interestingly, is not just calling out Google. It's also trying to regulate artificial intelligence. It has also adopted a landmark AI Act. This act aims to ban systems that pose unacceptable risks to society. It puts in place greater privacy standards, stricter transparency laws, and steeper fines for failing to cooperate. This comes weeks after OpenAI CEO Sam Altman asked for global regulation of artificial intelligence. And in another indication that it's not just Google that is in the crosshairs, in April this year, EU set a deadline for 19 tech giants to comply with its new set of regulations on content. This included Google, but also Meta, Twitter, Amazon, Bing, and TikTok. The rules known as the Digital Services Act, or the DSA, came into force late last year. They require tech firms to reduce harm online, to introduce protections for user rights, and to impose new transparency and accountability requirements on digital platforms. The firms have until August the 25th to put these rules into effect. So, lots of regulation coming and lots of regulation at the EU end. And for more on that, we're now being joined by Luciano Faridi, who's the founding director of the Yale Center for Digital Ethics. He's also professor of cognitive science at Yale University. Professor Faridi, thank you so much for joining us. These steps that we are now starting to hear about, regulate big tech monopolies, do something to break them up. We've been speaking about this for a long time. Do you think it's now moving, it's now actually getting some teeth and moving forward?
I think so. I think you're right. The time has come for some bills, some local legislations, global agreements to become actual law and start becoming something that companies will have to comply with. The typical, perhaps more visible example is the European legislation, but there are literally tens and tens of bills and laws all over the place, from state-based regulation in the United States, imagine California, Illinois, all the way to enormous, gigantic presence, imagine India, Brazil, Australia, who are moving towards a firm legislation.
So there are two different types of regulations that will probably be coming, right? One is tech monopolies and the economic power that they wield. That is one set of regulations. And the other is new technologies are coming which can be misused, like AI and others, and those need to be regulated. So two different types of technologies that we're going to be, two different types of regulations that we're going to be seeing a lot of.
Well, that's the danger of a fragmented approach to regulation. I think we will see some extra time internationally spent on making sure that that fragmentation that you mentioned doesn't happen, and especially that companies all over the world have a clear indication, a clear signal of what is right and wrong. Let me add one point from a sort of industry-related perspective. Companies may not like regulation, but they dislike more uncertainty or fragmentation. Imagine an international company that has to do X and Y and Z, depending on whether it's in this country, in that country, in the European Union, in India, in China, in the United States. Well, clearly that is a scenario that the company does not want to see. So I think that the companies in the long run will welcome international regulations more than fragmented and ad hoc, specific rules that will make their life much more difficult.
All right, so well, thank you so much for joining us with that perspective. As I said, early stages, I guess there's a lot that's going to be happening in the years ahead. Thank you for being with us.